What's up, guys? 1-3 day yesterday. I don't know when this thing is going to turn around. This is just awful. I thought the start of the baseball season would be better. I haven't done badly in baseball, but 1-3 overall yesterday was awful. With only the Knicks getting there. Miami Marlins should have gotten there. The Marlins. Weathers actually was arguably the better pitcher in that game over Lance Lynn. Weathers gave up fewer runs. Miami had the lead. It was 4-1 in the middle of the game, something like that. I think Miami would have covered the first 5-inning wager, but there was no way I was going to do that. Even though Miami's bullpen is not good, I thought they still had the bullpen rest advantage in that game, so it made sense to make it a full game play, but that did not work out. They blew the 4-1 lead, not the entire thing. They still had the lead 5-3. I think in like the 8th inning, they were still up 5-3, and then they gave up 5 runs and lost. So the final there, not really indicative of what actually happened in that game. The other 2 games, yeah, those were losses. Let's move on to today. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. NBA, big card today, but when you get down to the end of the NBA season, man, I mean, you're looking for motivation. You got a bunch of teams that I would say don't have it. Just too many like double-digit favorites, too many teams that have basically given up on the season. The one spot that I do like here, which the line here might look a little bit misleading and maybe cause the public to want to come in on the wrong side of this, and what I think is the wrong side of it, that is going to be to play. Oh, man, I'm still hitting my hat on this mic stand here. Oh, God. Got to get it away from me. I'm going to play on the Phoenix Suns. It looks like they're up from 4-4 with juice. I was still able to find a 3.5 out there. I don't know if those are still around. 4, I guess, is probably still fine. T-Wolves are a square public underdog here, I would have to say. 84% of the tickets, 58% of the cash. So the cash discrepancy going against them, the reverse line movement against them, it kind of looks too easy to take the T-Wolves, who are one of the teams fighting for the top seed in the Western Conference, which, yeah, I mean, that is a motivator. But I think the records are misleading. The T-Wolves aren't exactly the same team without Towns in there. I think they take a bit of a step back without him. And again, it just looks way too easy. Oh, the T-Wolves, one of the teams that's near the top of the West, getting points from a team that has a worse record. That's easy, right? Take Minnesota. What did Minnesota do in their last game? I don't know. They blew somebody out. They won. Yeah, they beat Toronto by almost 50 points. They beat them by 48 points. So now they're coming off of that, too, after beating the Rockets and kind of sealing the Rockets' fate nearly. I think last night, unfortunately for me, pretty much is what really completely did it. But Minnesota, and you're coming off a win that's that crazy, even though it's against a Raptors team. It's not very good. The Raptors have basically given up on the season. I've mentioned that. Like, they've been getting blown out in like every game. So that win looks impressive based on the score, the amount of points scored, the blowout nature of it. But like I said, Toronto, they've just given up, man. So how impressive is it really to beat them? Even if it is beating them by a ton of points, Minnesota might be feeling a little bit high on themselves after that. They're up near the top of the conference. Now they have to go back out on the road to Phoenix. I mean, sure, they'll probably be focused on Phoenix because Phoenix is pretty good, but Phoenix needs this game more. Is that going to put the pressure on Phoenix more? It's possible. I don't like to play teams in a pressure spot necessarily when they're laying points like this, but I think the line is warranted and it looks suspicious. Like I said, where you have the team with the worst record, the 6th seed in the West, laying points against a team that is the 1 seed right now. Minnesota's already clinched a playoff spot. They're pretty much guaranteed at least one of the top 3 seeds. Phoenix, however, is sitting in the 6th, and they're essentially tied with New Orleans right now. Could go back and forth. They're in only 1 game above Sacramento, 1.5 above the Lakers, so they could easily fall back into the play-in spots, and they really don't want that. They do not want to have to face like a whatever. I forget. I think it's like a round robin, so it's like not a single game elimination, but it's a double game elimination. I think I got that wrong in some of my other videos, but still, you'd much rather have a series in the playoffs and be in the top 6. So that's what Phoenix is fighting for here. I think they have more to play for here, even though they themselves are coming off a couple pretty decent wins. Beating the Pelicans was a big win to finish the road trip. That was a win that helped them move up ahead of them in the standings and out of the play-in scenario temporarily. So that's a big win there. Then they were off of that huge win and in a return home spot. They didn't suffer the letdown. They were able to beat the Cleveland Cavs, who the Cavs do have some injury issues right now, man. So they're not like a really totally complete team right now. But even all of that being said, it was still a bad spot for Phoenix, and they still showed up and played a good game. I think it's pretty obvious they're going to show up in a game here with the Minnesota T-Wolves coming into their house. Phoenix has a really difficult remaining schedule with 4 of their remaining 6 games against the T-Wolves and the Clippers, and all 6 of them against likely playoff teams if you think the Kings are going to get in as one of the play-in teams. So not an easy schedule at all. So Phoenix, they're going to have to keep playing. This is a winnable game for them. So Phoenix Suns -3.5. Moving over to the NHL, this is the most dangerous of the plays. Arizona Coyotes +146. We're taking a home underdog that's in that like mid-size underdog range again here on this one. It's going to be a fade of Vegas. Vegas looks like they're up from -165 to -167 as a public road favorite of a decent size there. 85% of the tickets on them. According to pregame, 96% of the cash. And with the line moving up on them, it does look like they do have some cash coming in on them. I don't agree with it. I mean, they are public. That is for certain. Vegas, I mean, yeah, they are still fighting to make the playoffs, but they're sitting pretty well right now at the in the 3rd spot in the Pacific Division right now, out of the wild cards. But even if they fall into the wild card, I don't think there's not that much of a difference necessarily. Really, either way, you're in the playoffs and you're still going to play a road series in the first game, so that doesn't matter that much. They could potentially move up ahead of the Oilers. They're 3 games behind the Oilers, but still, they're not going to fall out of the playoffs at this point. They're 8 points ahead of the St. Louis Blues, or the first team out of the wild card. So it's looking pretty secure right now for all the teams that are in the playoffs as it stands right now in the Western Conference. Seems like those teams are probably all going to indeed make it. So that is the situation we have there for Vegas. They do have some padding as far as that's concerned. And they're coming off a huge game, a huge win over Vancouver. They've had 2 days off since then. But I think this is kind of a sandwich spot, even though, yeah, maybe they'll show up focused because this is a more winnable game than the games they have up next. You could argue that for sure. But coming off a big win over Phoenix, Phoenix. They're playing Arizona tonight, Phoenix. I'm still thinking of the NBA game. In a return home spot, they beat Vancouver. So they were not unfocused in that game because it was the top seed in their division, one of the best teams in hockey coming into their house. So they still focus on Vancouver for that weird single road game wedged in between 2 road trips. Kind of a weird spot there. Last 3 games, they beat Winnipeg, Minnesota in overtime, and Vancouver. So 3 pretty big wins there. 5 pretty tough road games in a row, really, going back to an overtime win over St. Louis and an overtime loss to Nashville. So they definitely needed this rest, but this rest might also kind of hurt their momentum a little bit. Now they go to Arizona, and they have a couple days off after this game, and then they face Vancouver again. So are the extra days off on each side of this going to be kind of like a momentum killer on the side coming into this, or is it going to be like enough padding that they're actually going to be focused on Arizona? I'm not so sure about that. I think this is a Vancouver sandwich here for Vegas. I don't love the spot, and they're not really fighting for their playoff lives really or anything at this point. So they might be able to take their foot off the gas a little bit because they know they're not going to drop out of the playoffs at this point. It's just a matter of whether they get the 3 seed or the wild card really at this point. Arizona, yeah, they're eliminated. They have nothing to play for, but I think they're a team that has not given up really on the season, even though they gave up a lot of goals in a couple of games in a row. They played a 2-1 game in their last game against the Canucks. But people then might see that and be like, well, they know Vegas is the better team anyway, but Vegas just beat Vancouver 6-3. Vancouver beat Arizona, so this is easy, right? Take Vegas. I'm not so sure about that. Arizona coming off losses against a couple of tough teams. Vegas coming into their house. They only have 1 more home game left on the season, and that's the last game of the season on the 17th. So they have a 5-game road trip after this in between those two. So I think they're going to want to get another win on this homestand here. This is a long homestand for them. So I like it for Arizona. better. They have the travel advantage at least as well. We'll fire a shot there on Arizona, and then going to baseball real quick. We got 2 plays in baseball. First play up is going to be the under in the Baltimore-Pittsburgh game. I like this one quite a bit. And this is might be a little bit of an under the radar type of play here because it's a game involving 2 starters who people don't really know that well. People really don't know Jared Jones at all in Pittsburgh. So it's a spot where the public might look at this and think, like, there's no way I'm going to play an under with a line this low. It looks like it's gone down from 8.5 to 8. I think the best you can do is 8 right now. The public percentages, looks like 90% of the tickets on the over and only 82% of the cash. Not sure about that, but the over is probably the more public side of the totals there, and the line is moving against that a little bit. But the pitching matchup and the scenario, I think, really screams an under in this one. With, like I said, the pitchers not being that familiar to the recreational bettor, especially Jared Jones on Pittsburgh, they're not going to look at this and say, wow, this total is only 8, and want to actually go under the 8 and then have to root for no runs to be scored as well. But I think that is the right side of this one, because when you get pitchers who the recreational bettors are unfamiliar with, it also means the opposing hitters might be unfamiliar with them. And oh boy, is that the case here. Not only that, but you also have neither of these teams played yesterday. So I think the bullpens are in a pretty decent spot here with, Pittsburgh did play yesterday. Sorry. Baltimore did not. So actually it would be a little bit better if Pittsburgh did not play yesterday. Sorry, I missed that one there. So I was going to say the bullpens are also in a really nice spot here. Pittsburgh, yeah, I mean, they did use a couple of their best relievers yesterday, but they did not like overly tax their bullpen. So I don't think it's that bad really. So I still like the under in this one, even though Pittsburgh did use a few relievers yesterday. Baltimore didn't play yesterday, so the bullpen setup is not too bad. And looking at the starting pitching matchup, that's really where you get a nice advantage here. Grayson Rodriguez pitching for Baltimore. People might not know him that well. He's had 1 season so far in the majors. He's only 24. Kind of a highly touted prospect for Baltimore. I bet on him a couple of times last year. His whip was definitely too high last year. He walked too many guys, but his strikeout rate was really good last year. Given his whip, his ERA was not as bad as you would expect, really, because he does have good stuff. So I think he's able to kind of keep the hits down a little bit. But he was a bit wild, but he might be getting that a little bit under control. His first start this year was really good with 9 strikeouts and only 1 walk. This guy has strikeout stuff. He has the ability to mow down major league hitters. He's got good stuff, man. Good potential from Grayson Rodriguez and Pittsburgh. Their hitters have never faced him before, so that's an advantage to the pitcher. The first time hitters have to face a new pitcher that they've never seen before. It's an advantage to the pitcher, and this is Grayson Rodriguez. He's a tall guy, too, 6'5", kind of an intimidating presence on the mound there, let's say. So I like it. Rodriguez, I think maybe he's being a little bit undervalued. I think the line, the total is about where it is, but yeah, I mean, this total is kind of indicative of a very good pitching match. I mean, the recreational bettors, like I said, are going to come in on this and really not think that that's what this is, but I believe that is what this is. Then on the other side, you got Pittsburgh, Jared Jones. I mentioned him last week in a game I played him against. Yeah, it was against the Miami Marlins, and the Miami Marlins don't have a good lineup at all really this year, but he kind of dominated them, even though, yeah, he gave up 3 runs, which is a bit too many runs. He only gave up 3 hits. Didn't go that deep into the game, but it was his major league debut, and he had 10 strikeouts in 5 2/3 with only 2 walks. I mean, that's a pretty good outing. Granted, like I said, it was against a bad lineup for sure, but really good, really a good debut for him, really. And he's got some pretty good strikeout stuff. He was a really high draft pick in the majors, I'm pretty sure, which I mentioned all this when I played on Pittsburgh in his debut. And I like him to have another good pitching performance here because Baltimore has, of course, never seen him before. So even though he's facing a good lineup in Baltimore, which might also put people on the over in this one, like recreational bettors. Oh, Pittsburgh, a 6-1 team against Baltimore, who everybody knows Baltimore's good and has some good hitters on that team. They're going to come in and like think this total looks way too low. But again, I don't think that that's the case. I like this pitching matchup for a low-scoring game here. Jared Jones, not seen before by Baltimore, so he's also going to have the advantage the first time through the lineup. And his ERA off of that first game where he did give up 3 runs in 5 2/3, Not a really bad outing, though, but it makes his ERA 4.76. So people might come in and look at that and be like, oh, this guy's not that good. We don't know who he is. He's got a 4.76 ERA. That's not very good. Yeah, I would dig deeper on that one because he is actually, like I said, a highly touted prospect. You look at his scouting reports, he has the ability to overpower hitters at a major league level, as you could see in his debut with 10 strikeouts. His whip only at .88 after that start, despite having 2 walks. He was quite difficult to hit in that game and had a lot of strikeouts. So, yeah, we're going to take the under in that one. And then on the other game, I'm completely going against the market here, which does actually terrify me. But I think the spot dictates a play on the Cincinnati Reds, and I'm completely going against the market read in this one. This is a strong market read against the Cincinnati Reds, and I don't understand it at all. It's down from -140 to -118 on Cincinnati as the home very small favorite at this point. That's indicating that they're not even the better team here. But I think Cincinnati has multiple pretty big edges in this game. The situational edge, the rest edge, and I think they have the starting pitching edge too. But the line's moved down on them. They have 83% of the tickets on, with 77% of the cash on the other side on the Mets. Again, I just don't get it. It looks like a pros versus Joes type of situation where the pros are coming in on the Mets, who only have 1 win on the season, and fading Cincinnati, who's 4-2 on the season. So, yeah, I mean, you could argue the records are a little bit misleading, but I'm just looking at the specific spot here, man. Yeah, Cincinnati has a better record than the Mets early on, and maybe Cincinnati's not the better of the two teams, really. But in this matchup, I think in this situation, you got to look Cincinnati's way in this one, man. The pitching matchup, Jose Quintana is pitching for the Mets, and I went against him in his first start. His ERA looks good at 3.86 after that first start, but he lost the game, and his whip is 1.71. He's putting way too many people on base. He's an old journeyman, man. Like I said when I played against him in his previous game, he is not a guy that comes in and mows people down. He's not a strikeout guy. He's a pitcher that relies on his command, his control. And yeah, the last couple of seasons, he hasn't been as bad. But even last year with the Mets, his whip was way higher than his ERA makes it look. Like his whip was indicative of a much higher ERA last year, too. And he did only have 13 starts last year. So he really hasn't had like a full season as a starter since all the way back in 2019. And when he had those full seasons as starters, his numbers were not good, man. Even back when he was on the White Sox early in his career, he only really had one full season really where his ERA was good in 2016. Where his whip was good. His ERA was pretty good for an extended stretch, but his whip was again indicative that his ERA should have been higher. So it's like he's getting away with putting guys on base. His strikeout numbers, like I said, not very good. He's not a guy that comes in and overpowers you, and he's nearing the end of his career, man. I want nothing to do with Quintana. I'm sorry. And batter versus pitcher here against the Cincinnati Reds hitters. The Reds hitters are 11 for 35 off of him lifetime, a 314 batting average off of him. So they've been able to hit this guy. So his history against the Reds hitters is not good. So that's another strike against the New York Mets in this game. Another reason why I don't like the pitching matchup, but I would much rather be on Hunter Green in this matchup. His ERA also looks better than it should be so far this season. Yeah, but I mean, what can you really take away from one start? Not a lot. He has a 1.93 whip after that one start. So, yeah, he also is putting too many men on base. Both of these pitchers were. His problem is his control, man, like it always is. He's a much younger guy. He's 6'5", so he's a menacing presence on the mound. We know he has good stuff. He has really, really good strikeout stuff. His strikeouts per 9 in his short career so far. He has 2 full seasons with the Reds so far. Strikeouts per 9 are like unbelievable, like off the charts good. Like way more strikeouts than innings pitched. Like his strikeouts per 9 are probably like in the range of like almost 11 strikeouts per 9 innings. That's absolutely insane to sustain over 2 seasons where you make 46 starts and you still maintain that. That's like outrageously good, really. His problem is that he walks too many guys, and his hits allowed aren't even really that bad. He's given up fewer than 1 hit per inning. So that's not too bad either, really. Just the walk numbers hurt. The hits maybe a little bit too high, but the walks definitely hurt. So that's what he's got to get under control, pun intended. If he gets his walk numbers down, he could be a really dominating pitcher, man. He's younger. He has a way, way higher ceiling at this point. We don't know how good he's going to wind up being in the majors. His potential right now is way high, way higher ceiling than Quintana, who's on the back end of his career and just does not have overpowering stuff. Green does. So I would much rather be on Green here, the way better strikeout pitcher. And he's the guy that has that batters have less experience with. Hitters have seen Quintana for like well over a decade at this point in this league, whereas Hunter Green, pretty new to the league, has not been seen very much. The Mets actually have seen him a lot because he has been in the National League, and for some reason he's faced the Mets a lot. But they're only 18 for 72 off him for only a 250 batting average. So that's he's done fine against these Mets hitters in a pretty big sample size. So nothing you could say where, he's done horrible against them, but the hitters haven't really done horrible against him either. He's given up 6 home runs against them, so that's a little bit of a concern that they've hit him for power, but his strikeout walk numbers against the Mets hitters are actually good. 20 strikeouts and 4 walks. That's way better than what Green's career is. So do you focus more on his stats against these specific hitters? I think in a way that does indicate something that these particular hitters maybe they are less good at drawing walks against a guy like Green, potentially, because it is a fairly decent sized sample size here with a pretty good strikeout walk ratio. Very good, actually. 5-1 in those, appearances, 400 Green. So I like all that, but I'm not even done yet. So I think they have the advantage in the starting pitching matchup. But I think Cincinnati also has a huge rest advantage and advantage in the schedule because Cincinnati, they didn't play yesterday, and the Mets played twice. The Mets had to play a doubleheader against Detroit, and they played an 11-inning game in the afternoon game. So the Mets had to use a lot of their bullpen. I mean, in that game, Hauser didn't make it that deep into the game, and the Mets used how many relievers? 7 pitchers came in relief. I don't know if any of them are actually starters that they brought in, but none of them pitched for that long, except for Tonkin in the end, threw a lot of pitches. But still, first game alone in the doubleheader, they used 7 guys out of the bullpen. And then the second game, they had to hold on to a 2-1 win in the night game. The Mets, actually, they scored 2 at the very end. They wanted a walk-off. So in that game, they actually saved their bullpen in the later game fine. So they had Garrett coming in and pitching 3 innings and getting the win in a game where they were able to they were losing 1-0 most of the game and wound up winning the game in the end. Yeah, but they still played 2 games yesterday. One of the games going into 11 innings. So even that first game alone really burned their bullpen. So their bullpen is certainly not in better shape here against Cincinnati's either, regardless of if you think the Mets might have the better bullpen. But they have so many guys that might be unavailable after that. After playing a doubleheader yesterday, who knows if their bats are going to be a bit tired or whatever. That was the Mets. Now they have to travel as well. Between last night and today, they played the doubleheader in New York at the Mets yesterday. Now they have to travel after that to go to Cincinnati. That's not great at all, man. So I think the spot is much, much better for Cincinnati. Cincinnati's returning home, from just a 1 series in Philly where they did pretty well. They won the series against Philly. Fine, not bad. They had a good game against Philly to finish the road trip there. They got the day off now, so I think the advantage is actually heavily in favor of Cincinnati for all the reasons I just said. Like, the rest spot is better for them. I think their bullpen is in a better situation, and the starting pitching matchup, I think, gives the edge to Cincinnati as well. So I don't understand what I'm seeing in the market, but it's giving us extra value. I found Cincinnati at minus 116, and maybe you can get even better than that. So I have some concerns about these plays today. We got to get back on track, man. We got to do it. So, I mean, I think the better plays out of these ones that I have today are the Phoenix Suns and the under in that Baltimore game. But we'll see what happens. I will also point out quickly that the other side of that doubleheader yesterday, Detroit, they are also playing today, having played 2 games yesterday against an opponent, Oakland, who didn't play at all yesterday. But Detroit's a big favorite. They're a heavy favorite. I can't do that one. If I was going to play that, if you force me to, I would probably take the Oakland A's run line, the plus 1.5 runs or whatever. You can probably get that at around minus 110 or something, or maybe even better on Oakland. Because, yeah, Detroit is coming off also playing in that doubleheader yesterday with Oakland having the day completely off yesterday. But Detroit does have a big edge in the starting pitching matchup, I would say, in that one with Skubal, who's one of their really good young arms, against JP Sears, who is the significantly inferior pitcher in that matchup. So I don't really want to get involved in that one. But just pointing out, Detroit is also in kind of a bad spot there. And the market read on that one actually looks like Detroit is public, and it looks like the cash discrepancy, at least, maybe not the market moves on it. It looks like the cash discrepancy is at least kind of against the Detroit side there. And that game has a low total too. So if you're playing the run line in that, you are getting a little bit more value for each run because the total is so low in that one. It's 7.5, which I understand on the side of Skubal there because he's so good. But with Sears pitching on the other side, that it seems a little bit odd to me that the line is that low on the total there, with Sears being on one side of it. But I don't know. They are both lefties, though. So the offenses could both potentially struggle in that one. That's going to do it, man. Those plays one more time. In Major League Baseball in the afternoon, Baltimore and Pittsburgh under 8. I found it at minus 105. I think you can find something like that. Cincinnati Reds in the early evening slot at minus 116. In NHL, we're going late into the night now with a couple of late night games. Arizona Coyotes plus 146 and Phoenix Suns minus 3.5. That's going to do it for me. I'm Toad. Have a good one. Peace.